Welcome. I'm Dr. Suzanne Mulvehill. Welcome to the Orgasm Hour live Q&A. Today we are on episode 10, and it is on how to support your partner who may have orgasm difficulty without creating pressure for her. So this is a very important topic, and I'd like to welcome you all to our show today. And we're going to go over three issues today. Okay, so the first I want to talk about the theme that we're going to talk about is that what is a supportive partner? That's going to be number one. Then we're going to talk about some comments that can create pressure, and we're going to look at a study of where those comments were actually made and how they were organized by themes. And then we're going to look at particular research on how partners can support their women's orgasm, particularly when there's orgasm difficulty. So the theme, what is a supportive partner, particularly for a woman who has orgasm difficulty? Let me share with you what that is, okay? So a supportive partner remains interested in her pleasure without making her responsible for producing or having an orgasm. The goal is not her orgasm. The goal is curiosity, good communication, and safety, most of all, that she feels safe in your presence. She feels safe in the surroundings. She feels safe in her body, and her being safe in her body is part of what we talked about last week, which is her job, right? So last week we talked about, this is part one of a two-part series. Last week we talked about what it is for the woman inside of herself when she's in a partnership, how she needs to share about her orgasm problem or talk about it or not put pressure on herself to orgasm when she's with a partner. So let me read this again because there's a little bit more. A supportive partner remains interested in her pleasure while without making her responsible for producing an orgasm. I'm going to start over. A supportive partner remains interested in her pleasure without making her responsible for having an orgasm. The goal is curiosity, communication, and safety, not monitoring, demanding, or taking the outcome personally. And I say outcome personally because I hear women talk about how their partner gets very upset when they don't have an orgasm. The partners can make the woman feel bad for not having an orgasm. That's the partner's problem. So, when that starts getting, I want to say, dragged into the situation, when the partner is feeling that, wow, her orgasm, I can't make her have an orgasm and I feel depressed about that, you have to take that off your shoulders because that's not your responsibility. However, what is your responsibility is not to put pressure on her, not to make her responsible for having an orgasm. If if she says, listen, I haven't been able to have an orgasm, and you're like, well, we're going to make sure you have one. I can tell you right now that immediately is going to put pressure on her by the way it is expressed to her. So the distinction here is that supporting her orgasm means helping to create the conditions in which orgasm may become accessible on its own. It does not mean requiring her body to produce an orgasm. So the things that we are going to talk about for the partner of how you can create an environment of safety. So let's talk first now about comments that can actually create pressure. Let's go through some. Have you come yet? I've talked about that on another show, that was really something that was said to me by my husband. Have you come yet? And I don't remember if I did end up coming or not, but I just remember that comment. Like, what? Are you close? Being asked repeatedly. Um, I need you to finish. These are creating pressure. What am I doing wrong? We have been together. We've been doing this forever. Like, just relax is definitely one that um, is an off the cuff, not necessarily, doesn't necessarily help create relaxation. You came with someone else. Why can't you come with me? These are, again, comments that have been made in the research that show up. I'm not going to stop until you come. Doesn't work. These types of comments can shift a woman's attention away from sensation and toward time, monitoring, responsibility, and concern for her partner's feelings. And I can tell you, in a study that we have talked about here on this podcast, I've talked about it a number of times, by Contula and Meetonen. It's a 2017 study called "The Determinants of Female Sexual Orgasm," and they concluded that study trying to, I want to say, puzzled. They were puzzled by why women were putting their partner's pleasure above their own. So, something that we women need to take a look at: why are they prioritizing their partner's pleasure over their own? So, another thing I want to talk about is pressure. So, this idea of pressure that gets put on a woman in a partnership to have an orgasm, it's also communicated without words. It's communicated through the body. The guy who put the lube on her and started, quote, jackhammering away, um, those were the woman's own words. Did that make her feel good? Like, if that's how she ends up commenting is, "Yeah, he put the lube on and started jackhammering away." Um, Clearly that's not having concern for her pleasure. Like, it's kind of like not really being in flow with her. And I was asked on TikTok yesterday, in fact, "What is flow?" And I sent a copy of a research paper. She said, "I can't open the link." So a flow state is when you're in synchronicity with your partner to the point that time disappears, monitoring disappears, any type of evaluation or thinking disappears, and you're fully in the present moment with your partner in synchronicity, meaning you're flowing together like the water flows over the rocks in the river. It's similar to that. So let's talk about some comments that actually can create safety. Now, having been a woman who has had orgasm difficulty myself, and having had a partner say, "Yeah, it's okay if you don't come," and I know he genuinely meant that, I can tell you that my own feelings of shame and inadequacy were so great that that didn't really help me. Um, so I just want the partners to know that this problem can be very deeply imprinted in a woman, that there is something wrong with her. She believes there's something wrong with her. She feels inadequate. And even sometimes, if you're going to say something nice like, "Hey, it's okay if you don't orgasm." Like, no big deal. So it's okay. It's not a problem. Um, that she still might not hear you. Now, I remember two partners who clearly shared that with me, and it's still, my issue was so deeply imprinted that I'm not sure it would have taken more than just one comment, uh, which is all they made, was one comment, and I didn't articulate and say, "Listen, I have this deep imprint of being deeply shamed by this problem. I have a deep imprint." I didn't go into that. I just heard their comment and, felt the shame. So there may be something, even though you can comment, that can help create safety, um, it still may not resonate completely if she's deeply imprinted with shame and feelings of inadequacy or something being wrong with her. Just so know that. But here are some comments that can help create safety, and even talking about it, like going into more depth than just, there's no pressure if you don't orgasm. It's okay. You know, um, Tell me what feels good. Let's take this. Now, this is something that I haven't had happen with these partners that actually said, nice things, meaning they were supportive of my orgasm problem, and it's okay, we'll work on it. Or, um, but this one really resonates. Tell me what feels good, and we'll change anything that doesn't. And I'm gonna go really let's set up a container. Let's set this sexual experience up as a practice where we're gonna just focus on your pleasure. And all we're gonna focus on what I'd like, and make sure it's okay with your partner, right? That I just want you to would like for you just to tell me this stroke that feels good, the pace that feels good. And this reminds me of orgasmic meditation. For those of you that know of orgasmic meditation, it's a 15-minute practice. A 12-minute practice? I don't know. It's 12 or 15 minutes where the woman's clitoris is stroked by a stroker, and it's the same container every time. You can Google it, orgasmic meditation. There are studies that show that the brain waves. Welcome. I have a blurry camera. Okay, thank you for telling me. Maybe is that better? Because I had something over it. Um, Hopefully that's better. Thank you for telling me that. I had a Word document over it. So glad yeah, that's why we have Q&A, so you can tell me if something's going awry. I got finally got the mic figured out, and I think now I can't put what I'm referencing on top of the video. Hopefully this is better. Let me know if it is. And we also have a delay on the chat, so you know that as well. Okay, so going back to this, and again, I sent you a video for reference of what it looks like. I don't know why it's not looking clear. I think she sent me a picture, just one second here, on WhatsApp of what it looks like. I'm blurry. All right. Hopefully I am better. Okay, let me know if it's better. If you can let me know if it's better. I have a feeling it was blurry because of, like I said, I was looking at a Word document while I was on camera. Hopefully, otherwise we're just going to keep this as as an audio and not a video when it gets recorded. So hopefully it's better. Because otherwise I don't know what's going to fix it. I mean, I was just on a Zoom call and it was fine with the same camera that I'm using, which is the HD camera. Okay, so tell me what feels good, and we'll change anything that doesn't. And again, spending time here, like really spending time. Let's explore what feels good. Let's really take some time to explore what feels good, and we're going to talk about that with the research in just a moment. Um, would you like more or less, slower, faster? And a lot of times the woman doesn't know, because she may not have explored her body herself, which is her job, to explore her body. And it's something in a partnership you can do together. I mean, I will say that most women probably, let's reverse this statistic. 10 to 15% of women have never had an orgasm, or have what's called primary anorgasmia, meaning they haven't had an orgasm yet in their life. That means that 85 to 90% of women are able to orgasm. More than likely, they're able to orgasm through masturbation. So what this means is the 10 to 15%, if you're with a partner who has never orgasmed in their life, that may be different than a woman who can orgasm through masturbation. And again, having a masturbation practice where you can create the environment that is similar to when she's masturbating alone or when you're masturbating alone. So that, but not making the goal orgasm, making good communication the goal, making connection the goal, making flow the goal, not orgasm. So, all right, and then here too, you don't have to protect my feelings. I want to understand your experience. Your pleasure matters, even if orgasm doesn't happen. I mean, again, I remember a man being like, it's okay. You want orgasm? Fine. You don't want orgasm? It's okay. However, going deeper in that for women, knowing that women may have a deep imprint of feeling inadequate and shame that they're like, I want to say even a comforting comment isn't really going to go in very deep unless you take it deeper, unless the partner goes deeper. Now, I will tell you one situation where a woman who I had interviewed in my research, she when I had interviewed her for my dissertation research, she had never had an orgasm in her life. She was raped as a teenager. She told her then partner, "Listen, I've never had an orgasm and in my life." And he said, "Try this." And he gave her a hit of cannabis and she orgasmed the first time she used it. And they use cannabis before sex. They're married with 2 teenagers now. This was 5 years ago, so that the kids might be 20 or so, and they use cannabis before sex all the time. And it works like that for some women. Some women, it takes longer, but know that that is one of the, I'm going to call it an orgasmic learning pathway. Cannabis is an orgasmic learning pathway. I have a journal article coming out. It was just approved on Saturday. Orgasmic learning as a treatment framework for female orgasm difficulty disorder. Excuse me. And cannabis is one of the orgasmic learning treatment, one of the orgasmic learning pathways. Hypnosis is another pathway. Back in the 60s, there was LSD assisted therapy, believe it or not, that was a pathway. Tantra, there's a research on Tantra, help women learning how to orgasm through Tantra and breath work. All of these are evidence supported pathways, and they have one thing in common. It's the therapeutic target. And the therapeutic target is an absorbed, altered, or otherwise orgasmic supportive state that creates an environment within the body and the mind and the nervous system that orgasm can emerge. So all of the trying, even all of the arousal, in many cases, women can orgasm without genital stimulation. We don't hear about that in the traditional sexual response models because in the dominant sexual response models, arousal is supposed to make an orgasm happen. But for women who have orgasm difficulty, arousal doesn't necessarily make an orgasm happen. The altered state does. So that's what we're teaching here with orgasmic learning. And we'll be spending the month of September going through, actually, I have 3 shows in September, 3 podcasts that are going to be about orgasmic learning and going into the pathways. So let's get into the research. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you can see. I have a dog barking outside that knows that I'm here, but she's going to have to go home. Sorry, little girl. Her name is Azul, and my door is closed. Okay, so let's go here. This is the first that we're going to be looking at today about going back to how partners can help their partner who may have orgasm. It's clear now. Okay, thank you, Cha. Now at least I know what the problem was. It was I can't put something on top of the screen. Okay, so this is a research paper in 2022. It's published in the Archives of Sexual Behavior, titled "Orgasm Coercion: Overlaps Between Pressuring Someone to Orgasm and Sexual Coercion." We hear about sexual coercion, right? Where someone is sexually coerced into having sex. This is orgasm coercion, where women are coerced into having orgasm. Yes, it exists. So let's take a look. We have talked about this in one of our other shows, but this one is particularly for the partners of women who have orgasm difficulty to be aware. They may be thinking that they're helping, but they may not be. So it's important to know if you're helping or if you're not helping, and knowing that women will prioritize their partner's pleasure over their own. Knowing women will fake orgasm even in order to get sex over with, or if they're feeling pressure to orgasm, they're going to fake orgasm, gentlemen and ladies even. So partners need to know that there's an impact of, even if you're not intentionally trying to create pressure for a woman to orgasm who has orgasm difficulty, it can come across to the woman as orgasm coercion. I thought this was an excellent, excellent research paper on this. So let's read the abstract. Trying to ensure that a partner orgasms during sex is generally seen as positive, but research has yet to assess how this might involve pressuring partners to orgasm in coercive ways. In the present study, we tested whether pressuring a partner to orgasm is a coercive behavior by assessing how this behavior overlaps with sexual coercion, meaning pressuring someone to have sex, similarly to pressuring someone to have an orgasm. Participants of diverse gender, sex, and sexual identities, there were 912 people in the study. The average age was 31, and completed an online survey that asked them whether they had ever felt pressured by a partner to orgasm and to describe what partners have said or done to pressure them, and to ask a series of questions about the most recent incident in which this occurred. Mixed qualitative and quantitative results, meaning mixed responses that they wrote, as well as the questions that they checked off in the survey, showed that orgasm pressure tactics were analogous, I think, to sexual coercion tactics, and that being pressured to orgasm was associated with experiencing sexual coercion. So this is really, really important for partners to be aware of, that in many women who, and it happens to men too. So I want to say it works both ways. It happens to work more with women because we know that up to 72% of women have orgasm difficulty according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and that majority is during partnered sex. So faking, here we go, um, was associated with experiencing sexual coercion, faking orgasm, and negative psychological and relational outcomes. Like, women have left relationships because of this. Men have left relationships because of this. Partners have left. I mean, this is not a little issue. This is a pretty serious issue that needs to get talked about more, which is why we're having it here on the Orgasm Hour. Together, findings challenge the assumption that trying to ensure a partner's orgasm occurrence is necessarily positive, and demonstrate that orgasm coercion exists. So important that you know that this orgasm coercion does exist. We talked about some of the, we're going to go to the comments that have been made of what sexual coercion, what orgasm coercion looks like by both men and women. So this is a table of the orgasm pressure tactics examples that were quoted, and there were 340 total descriptions of partners, both men and women, who felt orgasm coercion, and they were grouped by the type of coercion. For example, continued sexual activity, meaning 81 people said, they kept wanting me to have sex because they wanted me to have an orgasm, basically. And here's an example of a comment specifically related to continued sexual activity. My ex partner, and notice that my ex partner would not take no if it didn't happen today as a response, and insisted on reciprocating even when it didn't make sense for me. This was a bisexual woman who was 28 years old. Here's another one. My sexual partner said, "I won't finish until you have an orgasm." I've had a partner that felt the need to get even rougher and insert himself more intensely with the belief that I would orgasm that way. This was a heterosexual woman, 24 years old. My sexual partner made it seem like sex wasn't over until both of us finished, even though I didn't want or feel the need to orgasm. They wanted me to get off. And this is a gay man, 26. So obviously, this comes from partners in both same sex relationships and heterosexual relationships, and affects both men and women. We'll go through 2 more of these, and then I wanna move on to the next study because we have a number of other studies to go through about this. Emotional manipulation, repetitively asking. 56 participants, 16% of the people who shared about feeling orgasm coercion felt emotional manipulation. My partner asked, "Did you come?" and very clearly and expectedly wanted me to say that I had. Bisexual woman, 24 years old. Now, what did she probably do? She probably faked it. She probably faked it. Next one. She asked me to come several times, even though I wasn't so turned on. Heterosexual man, 24 years old. This is a woman pressuring him to orgasm. Implying fault. This was 36 people, 0.6%, which was a small percent. Let's go to a bigger one. This was 150 people, which was almost half of the people who gave responses. 44%. You don't love me, making the participant feel guilty. You don't love me, or I can't make you come. You must think I'm ugly. This was a heterosexual man, 36 years old, who had said that. Now, I'm not sure he's saying that whether he said this or whether it was said to him, I'm not sure. Or maybe I think she said it to him. That's what happened. You don't love me, or I can't even make you come. You must think I'm ugly. I'm not sure. It was a heterosexual man, 36 years old. My partner pouted and acted frustrated and saddened by his own inability to make me come. This was a heterosexual woman, 27 years old, and I hear this a lot from women. So this is a really important one. The partner pouted and acted frustrated and saddened by his own inability to make me come. It's not the guy's fault, right? It's if the woman, maybe she doesn't orgasm, and that's the woman's, for her to communicate. So we're going to get to the communication part next. All right, let's get to the next study. This study is about, let me close so it comes a little bigger for you so you can see it a little bit better. Okay. This was a study published in Journal of Sexual Research, published in September of 2019, titled Couples Sexual Communication and Dimensions of Sexual Function, a meta-analysis. So we're going to take a look at the abstract here. Research and clinical data have shown that couples with sexual problems report a lack of sexual communication. However, no published meta-analysis have evaluated the relationship between sexual communication and sexual function. This meta-analysis examines the correlation between couples' sexual communication and dimensions of sexual function across 48 studies. Sexual communication was positively associated with sexual desire, sexual arousal, lubrication, orgasm, erectile function, less pain, and overall sexual function. The effect size for sexual desire and orgasm were higher for women than for men. So let's stop here for a minute so you know what this means. So what it's saying basically is that sexual communication was positively correlated. So the more there's communication between the partners, the better the sexual desire will be, the better the sexual arousal will be, the better the lubrication will be, the better the orgasm will be, the less pain there will be, and the overall sexual function, especially for women, will be higher if the partners have communication. It's both partners, but this gives an opportunity. This particular podcast is for the partners. So to know that you have an ability to facilitate good sexual communication. I don't like the word good, but better, really open up the doors to sexual communication with your partner. And you're going to see, especially if your partner is a woman, it can increase lubrication. It can, as I mentioned, it can reduce pain, sexual arousal, sexual desire, orgasm, even erectile function for men. So whether that's for same-sex relationships or for heterosexual, that the woman's sexual communication can also help enhance the male's erectile function. It's a significant point for partners, this sexual communication correlation. So, for overall sexual function, studies with married participants had a larger effect size than studies with participants with multiple relationship types, and than studies with dating participants. So, what that means is that there was better communication in the, well, let's see, for overall sexual function, studies with married participants had a larger effect size than studies with participants in multiple relationship types or than studies with dating. So, effect size were larger for studies conducted outside of the United States compared to studies compared in the United States. We address the importance of addressing the relationship between sexual communication and sexual function, as well as future directions for research in this area. So, what I'm understanding is that there were more studies for married participants than there were for multiple relationship types and for dating. And we know through some other um, shows that I've done, other podcasts, that the sex toys, for example, they enhance relationships and they're more likely to be brought in with steady partners, and that steady partners have more satisfying relationships when sex toys are part of the relationship. So sometimes women, I talked a few weeks ago about a woman who um, her partner didn't want her to bring in a vibrator, yet that's how she orgasmed, right? So here's another tip for partners is if you ask your partner, hey, well, do you orgasm um, through masturbation? And your partner says, well, yeah, I can orgasm through masturbation. And then you say to your partner, okay, well, tell me, like, how do you orgasm? How do you orgasm through masturbation? And your partner says, well, I usually use a vibrator. I say, well, let's bring it on. Bring your let's use your vibrator when we have sex next time. So that's an example of how to communicate with a partner who might have an orgasm problem and ask them, well, can you masturbate? Can you orgasm through masturbation? Because again, we know partners, you need to know that only 10 to 15% of women have not yet had an orgasm. That means that 85 to 90% are orgasming through masturbation and have difficulty during partnered sex. And this is not new. Cher Hite did the Hite report in 1976, and it raised high holy hell in the United States when more than 3,000 women revealed that, yep, we can orgasm through masturbation and our difficulty is in partnered sex, particularly during penetration. Many of us don't orgasm through penetration alone. And I will tell you what that comment resulted in. In my observation, women got penalized for that because it became a psychological condition in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders that if a woman couldn't orgasm through penetration alone, that she might just have a psychological problem. Freud started that, but that's a different show. Okay, so let's go on to the next study. Okay, this next study is, let's see here. It's called Dimensions of Couples Sexual Communication on Relationship Satisfaction and Sexual Satisfaction. So this one looks at the correlation. Let me see if this is the same thing. I just want to make sure. Nope, this is definitely a different study. Sometimes this look very much alike. This was a study published in the Journal of Family Psychology in 2022 by Alan Mallory. And let me make it a little bit bigger. We're going to read the abstract and see what did they study about couples' sexual communication and relationship satisfaction and sexual satisfaction. Here we go. Despite consistent evidence that sexual communication positively correlates with relationship and sexual satisfaction, there has been empirical murkiness regarding whether aspects of sexual communication matter more or less for relationship and sexual satisfaction. A systematic meta analysis was conducted to evaluate if the strength of the association between sexual communication and relationship and sexual satisfaction varied by the association between sexual communication and sexual satisfaction. Let's see, and individual, interpersonal, and cultural factors. So they're going to measure this and see how is sexual communication related to sexual satisfaction, interpersonal relationship, and the relationship overall. So the meta-analysis, this analysis included 93 studies with 209 unique effect sizes, which represented 38,499 unique individuals in current relationships. 38,000 people, right? The, the multi-level meta-analysis evaluated a positive association between sexual communication and both relationship and sexual satisfaction. Let's just stop there for a second to kind of internalize this and understand what they're exactly saying. And thank you for those who are here and joining and giving thumbs up. Any comments or questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. There is a delay, but we'll get to read them. So what this is saying here for relationship satisfaction and sexual satisfaction, no, that's not the part I wanted. Where is it? Let's see here. Here we go. This multi-level meta-analysis evidenced a positive association, meaning it was correlated between sexual communication and relationship and sexual satisfaction. That's how important sexual communication is. Sexual communication, not just what are we going to have for dinner tonight, right? Sexual communication is not what are we going to have for dinner tonight. Sexual communication is how would we like to explore sexuality tonight? I think I might like to have my clitoris stimulated in a different way, and would you be open to exploring how we could practice that? Or a gentleman saying, I'd really like to see about having my penis stroked differently in a new way that I tried during masturbation, and I'd like to incorporate that into our sex practice. Or how about if we have a sex practice? Let's see if we can set up like a container. Dr. Mulvehill talks about like setting up a container for sex and knowing that sexual communication is so important that how about if we talk about what kind of sex would we like to have next time? That's having sexual communication. So if we know, this study is revealing that out of 38,000 people and 93 studies, that sexual communication was correlated to an improved relationship and better sex. So why wouldn't people have more sexual communication? Right? Well, that's another topic because it's, sex is already, in our society in the last 2,000 years, sex has been suppressed, in my observation, mainly by religion. But that's another topic that's different. But we've been taught that sexual desire is actually something to control. And if we I was looking at the Catholic doctrines about masturbation. I mean, these doctrines have affected a lot of us. I mean, myself included, having grown up Catholic, how the beliefs around masturbation. And just know that Kellogg's cornflakes, if you Google it, I invite you to Google Kellogg's cornflakes to see how it came about and why they made Kellogg's cornflakes, because they wanted a bland cereal that would not invite masturbation, that might deter masturbation. I mean, really. So the problem is we have a society of sexual suppression at the same time as we have a society knowing that good sexual communication is going to improve your relationship and improve your sex life at the same time. So how do we overcome these conditions, the conditioning that actually keeps us sexually suppressed? That's why we're here at the Orgasm Hour. And that's where I've had to rise out of after 30 years of having orgasm difficulty myself and overcoming it with cannabis, something that I would have never tried in my entire life. And here becoming a clinical sexologist and an orgasmologist teaching and writing research papers on this. So if I can do it, you can do it, right? All you got to do is just good communication, good sexual communication for your partnership, and it'll help improve your relationship and your sex. Okay, I feel like let's continue to go with if there's anything else on this one. For relationship satisfaction and sexual satisfaction, the effect size for quality of sexual communication was larger than for the frequency of sexual communication. So it's here they're talking about quality over frequency. It's not how frequent you talk about sexual communication, it's the quality of it. It's the depth of it. So for going back to what I shared earlier, if a woman has orgasm difficulty and saying, "Oh, well, that's not going to bother me, no problem." So that isn't going to imprint a woman who's feeling um have feelings of inadequacy around her orgasm problem. So really developing your sexual communication, the quality of sexual communication is more important than how often you have talk about sexual how more often than your communication around sex and sexual disclosure. So let's read this again. For relationship satisfaction and sexual satisfaction, the effect size for quality of sexual communication was larger compared to the frequency of sexual communication and sexual self-disclosure. So quality of sexual communication is the key here. After controlling for the average age and relationship length of the sample size, samples with married participants had larger effect sizes compared to samples with mixed relationships. Higher levels, I don't know what this is going to say. I haven't read this yet. Higher levels of individualism strengthened and higher levels of gender inequality weakened the association between sexual communication and sexual satisfaction. So higher levels of individualism strengthened. That means the more women or gentlemen had individualism, the stronger the sexual communication, the stronger the relationship. All of that was strengthened. The higher levels of gender inequality. So that means the man thinking, I'm going to say man in this case, I got to make her orgasm, or it's my job to get her off. The more that exists in a relationship, that inequality, the less sexual satisfaction there's going to be. In other words, the more equality there is in the relationship, the gender equality, the better the quality of the relationship and the sex will be. And I will say that shows up in same-sex relationships for women, where we know in research that women in same-sex relationships have more orgasms than women in heterosexual relationships. And it appears that this gender inequality that shows up pretty much in many other areas of society, it exists in the bedroom too. And it exists in showing up in an orgasm gap. So closing that gender gap in bed is going to improve your sex life and your partner's sex life too. Okay, finally, when sociosexuality was low, sexual communication had a large association with relationship satisfaction for men and a small association for women. Sociosexuality was low. Sociosexuality, that's a new term for me, was low. Sexual communication had a larger association with the relationship satisfaction for men. I'm going to call sociosexuality. I don't know if anybody wants to look that up while we're on the call, but that's a new word for me. I'm interested in knowing what that actually means. Sociosexuality. So I'm not going to comment on that because something that I'm learning myself. But when that was low, sexual communication had a large association with relationship satisfaction for men. I just find that kind of interesting, whatever that is. Okay. Our shows go so fast, it's like almost hard for me to believe. Okay, next one. Women's sexual satisfaction, communication, and reasons for no longer faking orgasm. Findings from a US probability sample. This is by Debbie Herbenick and her team. We've seen quite a bit of research from her over the last I've featured her research in a number of papers now. And in this particular paper, let's see here. This was a paper of the Archives of Sexual Behavior. It was published in 2017. And let's see what they studied. We aim to assess among a US probability sample of adult women the prevalence of and reasons given for faking and no longer faking orgasm, women's histories of sexual non communication and reasons for non communication. So, women's histories of sexual non communication and reasons for non communication, associations between sexual non communication and sexual satisfaction and faking orgasm. I mean, it's kind of like a mouthful to see what they were actually studying, and associations between specific communication and recent sexual satisfaction. So let's see what they said. Respondents were there was 1,008 adult women, 18. I'll make this bigger and see if you can see it a little better. There we go. Okay, I'm here. Respondents were 1,008 adult women, 18 to 94 years old, and English speaking adults who completed a confidential internet based survey. Although 58.8% of the female respondents reported having ever faked pretended orgasm, 58.8% reported having faked or pretended orgasm. 67.3% of those who had ever faked orgasm no longer did. That's interesting, right? So 58%, the majority of women in partnered relationships, male and with men and women, have faked orgasm. And 67% of those who said they faked it said they no longer did. That's encouraging. So, but why were they faking it? Let's see. Okay. Women who continue to fake orgasm were more likely to indicate embarrassment talking about sex with their partner in explicit ways and were less likely to agree that they and their partner are able to talk specifically about what makes sex more pleasurable for them. So women who were just faking orgasm had a harder time talking about sex with their partner in explicit ways and were less likely to agree that they and their partner are able to talk specifically about what makes sex more pleasurable for them. So, could this relate to gender inequality? I'm thinking of some studies in some countries where there is a lot of gender equality, where there is also there's a study out of Iran, for example, with the percentage of women that fake orgasm in Iran. It's a quite high percent. And if we know that in a general sample of an anonymous 1,000 women, that 58% have faked orgasm, that means that 58% of relationships, in general, women have faked orgasm. You've been with someone who has faked an orgasm. Yeah. And I had this conversation with a man one time at an orgasmic meditation meeting, and he said, I think she did probably fake an orgasm. And I one time was with a man that I swear to God, he faked his orgasm. And of course, we didn't talk about it, right? So, yes, why do we do this? I don't know, but maybe we can actually make some improvements by learning more and normalizing the conversations around sex. So here we go. Let's keep going. More than half, 55% of women reported that they had wanted to communicate with a partner regarding sex, but decided not to. The most common reasons were not wanting to hurt a partner's feelings, 42%, not feeling comfortable going into detail, and embarrassment. Greater self-reported sexual satisfaction was associated with more comfortable sexual communication. So we keep seeing that theme. We've looked at now 4 studies, and the theme across the studies is exactly this. Greater self-reported sexual satisfaction was associated with more comfortable sexual communication. So that is a message to partners that you can help create an environment of good sexual communication, quality sexual communication. Ah, thank you. Yes, a simple take your time. I'm here for your darling. For you, darling. You are absolutely right. And you just reminded me. This is Patrick who's commented here. A simple take your time. I'm here for you, darling. It reminds me of an experience that I had with a man that I'm going to share with you because it was a monumental, where I found myself moving into, um, how would I say this? I had taken a hit of cannabis and I was doing my own experimenting, coming out of my orgasm problem with this guy, right? After 30 years, you wonder if it's ever going to actually change. And he was stimulating me in a way where I could feel I was able to like focus, and my body, my head naturally went back as I was enjoying this, and then the good girl in me or something in me made me sit back up. And he was so in tune with me, this man, that his hand was behind my head, and he said, "I got you, baby. I got you." And I leaned my head back, and I swear to God, within, I don't know, I didn't measure the time. All I know is that, "You're coming, baby. You're coming." And for the first time in my life, I ejaculated and I orgasmed at the same time. And I will tell you, I burst out into tears. That's how powerful it is. That's how powerful a partner's, "I got you, baby. Take your time, baby. I'm here." Oh my God, it gives me I mean, honestly, as I'm sharing this with you, I hope it's transmitting to you because I'm feeling the sensations in my own body. I'm here for you, darling. I got you, baby. So, yes, it goes a long way. And when it's authentic, when there is truly no pressure, when it's simply going into that state where she can go into the state, there's no trying there. The orgasm happens all by itself. Whew. Okay. So, here, let's close this out. Studies, findings, and implications for professionals are discussed in the context of sexual development and learning. This includes growing more comfortable talking with a partner about sexual preferences and sexual pleasure. I mean, that's a peak, right? But we got a little more work to do. Let's go to the next study. This next study is on newlyweds. Here we go. Let me close out these boxes so you can see what I'm talking about. Make it a little bigger. Sometimes making it too big, I have to make it a little bit smaller so we can see what's going on here. This is published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine, titled "The Significance of the Female Orgasm," a national representative dyadic study of newlyweds' orgasm experience. It was led by a gentleman named Nathan Leonhardt, and it was an article in Press. I don't know the date of when this was published offhand. So let's take a look at the abstract. The executive summary, for those of you that are familiar with business planning, or business plans. Okay, self-reported orgasm, perception of partner's orgasm, and misperception of partner's orgasm have each been correlated with individual sexual and relationship satisfaction. But these associations have rarely included dyadic data, have not fully accounted for potentially confounding variables such as sexual communication, and have never been simultaneously studied with the national representative sample. So, the aim of this study is to provide a more complete picture of how the orgasmic experience within the heterosexual couple influences individual and partner sexual and relationship satisfaction. What did they do? They studied 1,683 newlywed heterosexual couples, and they did a model to test the associations between husbands and wives' self-reported orgasm frequency, husband and wife reported of the other partner's orgasm frequency. So basically what's happening is one partner is saying, "Yes, my partner orgasmed," thinking that they did, right? So let's see if that's what this is going to say. So, and husband and wife misperceptions of their partner's orgasm frequency as correlates of relationship and sexual satisfaction. So, both the husband and the wife completed a satisfaction index to assess their own relationship satisfaction and complete sexual satisfaction instrument designed for the CREATE study. The results, this is my favorite part. 87% of husbands and 49% of wives, here we are, reported consistently experiencing orgasm. I'm going to repeat that. 87% of husbands and 49% of wives reported consistently experiencing orgasm. 43% of husbands misperceived how often their wives experienced orgasm. So almost half of the husbands misperceived how often their wives experienced orgasm. The final structural equation model, this is now we're going into the science, including sexual communication, explained moderate amounts of variance in the wives' and husbands' relationship satisfaction and high levels of variance for wives' and husbands' sexual satisfaction. So they're looking at relationship satisfaction and sexual satisfaction, and there was a lot of variance between the husbands and the wives' sexual satisfaction, and the variance in the wives and husbands' relationship satisfaction. Let's see what they found out. Wives' relationship satisfaction was positively associated with wives and husbands' sexual communication. This again goes to the partners, right? This is it. Wives' relationship satisfaction was positively associated with wives and husbands, with them talking about sex. That's what it was correlated to. Wives' sexual, that was their relationship satisfaction. So their relationship satisfaction was positively associated with the couple's sexual communication. Wives' sexual satisfaction was positively associated with self-reported orgasm frequency. So the more frequent that the woman would orgasm, the more sexual satisfaction she had in the relationship. And both wives and husbands' sexual communication. So let me read that sentence again. Wives' sexual satisfaction was positively associated with self-reported orgasm frequency in both wives and husbands' sexual communication. Husbands, let's see what the husband said. Husbands' relationship satisfaction was positively associated with husbands and wives' sexual communication. Husbands' sexual satisfaction was positively associated with husbands' perception of wives' orgasm frequency and both husbands and wives' sexual communication. So this is pretty interesting. So the husband's sexual satisfaction was correlated with his perception of her orgasm frequency. But we saw up here that 43% of husbands misperceived how often their wives orgasmed, and only 49% of wives consistently experienced orgasm. And I can tell you from my own research study of cannabis and female orgasm for women with and without orgasm difficulty, the women with orgasm difficulty was 52%. So that's pretty consistent. So here you can see that if husbands are feeling that the perception of their wives' orgasm is that important, that they 43% of them misperceive how often they orgasm because it's an important part for them to feel sexual satisfaction. And both, okay, so what's the clinical translation? Like, what does this actually mean? When counseling couples, clinicians should give particular attention to the wife's orgasm experience to potentially help both husband and wives have higher sexual satisfaction. So that's how important this is. The orgasm, the female orgasm in the relationship is this sexual communication, and the husband's perception of the wife's orgasm frequency is correlated to his sexual satisfaction. So it's not correlated to the husband's orgasm frequency is not correlated to her sexual satisfaction. It's interesting. So what's the conclusion? Wives' orgasms, wives' sexual report of frequency, and husband's perception of frequency has a unique positive association with sexual satisfaction even after taking into account other aspects of the orgasm experience and sexual communication. It's a very interesting study. Many of these myself, I haven't seen all of this research. I'm exploring it like with you. Of course, I have all this in front of me, but I'm going into depth with you and seeing the theme of the sexual communication. And here in the heterosexual relationships that men attribute here, husband's sexual satisfaction was positively associated with the husband's perception of the wife's orgasm frequency. And in the other study, we saw that 58% of women were faking orgasm, and around 67% of women stopped faking orgasm. So if men are thinking that their wives are orgasming, and here we know 43% of husbands misperceived how often their wives are experiencing orgasm, that could be because they're feeling some pressure. So got to take the pressure out of there. Husbands, partners, no pressure. Women have to take the pressure off themselves too. Let's keep going. I had one more. Let's just do one more study here. I had one more I was going to share with you that wasn't published yet, but I don't want to lose the continuity of where we are here. So this will be our last study that we're going to review because we're already at an hour. Okay, this study is from the Journal of Sex Research, and it is titled Perceived Partner Responsiveness Moderates the Association Between Sexual Talk and Sexual and Relationship Well-Being in Individuals in Long-Term Relationships. So the last research paper we just looked at was on newlyweds. This one is on long-term relationships. And this one was published, do we see when this was published? 2019. And it was by Kathleen Merwin and Natalie Osen. So let's see what they had to say and what they studied here. Let me make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so let's read the abstract. Sexual communication, and this has been a theme throughout this entire hour about partnered sex, is good sexual communication for good relationship satisfaction. That's really it in a nutshell. Sexual communication promotes sexual and relationship well-being. Previous research has frequently neglected, I think I can even make this bigger for you. Here we go. So you can, for those of you that want to read it, that you could see it. Sexual communication promotes sexual and relationship well-being, promotes well-being. Talking about sex promotes sexual and relationship well-being. How many people have sex and don't even talk about it? You have to talk about it if you want to have a good relationship and you want to have good sex. I've been involved, I've done this myself, not talked about it. So now I not just talk about it, I'm sharing it with you. Previous research has frequently neglected couples communication that occurs exclusively during sexual activity and that is specific to the sexual interaction. So they're talking here about sexual talk while you're having sex. We examined associations between individualistic and mutualistic, meaning self and other focused sexual talk, and sexual and relationship well-being, and the potential moderating role of perceived partner responsiveness to sexual talk. So we saw in an earlier study that women that were faking, and the one about faking, and then they stopped faking, the ones that weren't stopping to fake felt that their partner was not receptive to the sexual communication or sharing about, this is what works for me. I mean, my own husband I would say, well, I would like this. And he said, well, I'm supposed to know what you like. I'm like, how are you supposed to know what I like? It's my body. I was in my 20s. He was my only sex partner. I didn't know anything else other than this one sex partner. But I was like, what do you mean you're supposed to know what I like? Like, sure, you have to have good sexual technique, but you all can check with your partner and say, does this feel good? Or just check in with her body. Is her body responding in a way that it feels good? So, okay, a community sample of 300 individuals, 303, 171 females in committed relationships completed online measures assessing sexual satisfaction, sexual functioning, sexual distress, relationship satisfaction, sexual talk, and partner responsiveness to sexual talk. Interesting, right? Greater mutualistic talk was associated with higher female sexual functioning. Greater mutualistic talk, meaning couple talking, was related or associated with higher female sexual functioning. So, this is again encouraging for the partner, talk about sex. Whereas greater individualistic talk was associated with lower relationship satisfaction. So, meaning talking about the self versus talking about the other. So, the self is this feels good, where the other means does this feel good for you? That's other. That's the mutualistic. That is the one that actually increases sexual satisfaction for the woman. So for the partners, does this feel good for you? Or here, Patrick Adams shared here a simple take your time. I'm here for you, darling. As he wrote in the chat box, he knows it works. So that is showing up right here in the research that when it's focused on the other, when the partner focuses on the other and says, take your time, honey. I'm here. I'm here for you, darling. I got you. That was associated with higher female sexual functioning, whereas greater individual talk was associated with lower relationship satisfaction. Okay, at higher levels of PPR, which was partner responsiveness to sexual talk, using more mutualistic talk was associated with less sexual distress and more individualistic talk associated with greater sexual satisfaction. So let's talk about an example here. More mutualistic talk was associated with less sexual distress. So someone saying, take your time, baby. I'm going to use that example because it's right here. Take your time, baby. I'm here. Just take your time. It can calm her nervous system. If it can calm her nervous system, she can move more into an orgasmic state. And more individualistic talk was associated with greater sexual satisfaction. So mutualistic talk was associated with less sexual distress for the partner, and more individualistic talk that this feels good for me was associated with greater sexual satisfaction. And this was talking specifically about partners' responsiveness to sexual talk. At lower levels of the partner's responsiveness to sexual talk, more mutualistic talk was associated with more sexual distress. So at lower levels, when there wasn't a lot of partner receptiveness, like the couple that I had talked about, where the woman, she wanted to bring a vibrator in and her partner didn't want her to bring a vibrator in. That's an example here where she had more distress. She went on to the Becoming Orgasmic thread on Reddit and talked about this with other women and said, basically, you need to leave this guy. You know, the way he's treating you, and we see other things that you posted about this guy, you need to leave this guy. So there's a whole network online anonymously on the web where men and women go to ask about situations in their relationship that may not land well in their system. And I mean, I've seen people get hundreds of responses that cannot be ignored. So, you know, I'm saying how important it is to have a good relationship talk, good sex talk, good communication, and being open. Not, no, I don't want you to bring a vibrator in. I should be knowing how you, no, 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 no. They're going to leave you. You know, if that's the kind of talk that's going to take place, many women are going to go online and say, they're going to get 100 women that say, you need to leave this guy or gal. And it gives them power to leave. So I've actually, that's another show, but I am very impressed with how many women, and I've seen men too, but mainly I'm on many of the women's threads, how many women go on and bring issues in that they get power from through other women. Okay. Let's finish this out here. So at lower levels of the partner's partner's responsiveness to sexual talk, more mutualistic talk was associated with more sexual distress, and more individualistic talk was linked to poor sexual satisfaction. This also, the partner's perception of the PPR may help buffer against the negative associations between self-focused sexual talk and sexual and relationship well-being, whereas other focused, meaning partners focused on the partner, may help be beneficial for sexual and relationship well-being unless a partner is perceived as very unresponsive, sexually unresponsive. Wow. Oh my God. That was a lot, right? Um, a lot going through my mind. I'm on my way to Greece tomorrow for 2 weeks. I'm going to be launching the Excavate Greece series. I'm headed to the Aleutian Mysteries, which is about 22 kilometers. It's a sacred pathway, a 22-kilometer pathway from Athens, Greece to Eleusis. I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. But there were, for more than 2,000 years, there were sacred rituals that took place in these Eleusinian mysteries that we don't even really know what they were because they were kept secret. But they involved, in many ways, an altered consciousness and sacredness that very much got stamped over and eliminated out of our society by religion, for lack of a better word. Christianity did a pretty good job at that. And as a kid, I went to Catholic school and um, was passed around to give money to the pagan babies. Anyway, another story. But the point is that this type of sacredness existed in our society. The altered states, the importance of altered state of consciousness, absorbed states of consciousness, and I'm headed to Greece, and I'll be posting about tuning in for my Eleusinian mysteries when I'm in Greece. Some of the live podcasts that I plan to do, or not really podcasts, but just live recordings on launching Excavate Greece. So also keeping you informed that my journal article, Orgasmic Learning as a Framework for Treating Female Orgasmic Difficulty Disorder, was approved by Current Sexual Health Reports, and that is in a proof mode right now, and we'll be talking about that in September, what orgasmic learning is, what the orgasmic learning pathways are, what they have in common in terms of, and they all have evidence to support that they are facilitate orgasm. They facilitate orgasm, access to orgasm. So I believe, and I'm going to wrap this up, that orgasm function is similar to the function of sleep, meaning it exists in our body. It's present all the time. Our function of sleep is present all the time. Our function of orgasm is present all the time. And the difference is how we access this function. So with sleep disorders, very often people have trouble accessing sleep. With orgasm disorders, people have trouble accessing orgasm. So what we do is we work on creating the conditions to make orgasm accessible. So that's my takeaway for you today. You're welcome to visit our websites where you can learn more about orgasmic learning at femaleorgasmtraining.com. You can also visit our research page at femaleorgasmresearch.org, where we conduct research, and the Women's Cannabis Project, which is womencp.org, where we work on law changes for medical cannabis policy. And I'm signing off, Dr. Suzanne Mulvehill, clinical sexologist, orgasmologist, the Orgasm Hour. See you in 2 weeks for the Orgasm Hour live. Thanks for watching. Ciao.